Well, today we are here with Leah and Darlene, who are really famous in the full bust fashion community, at least in my book, because they are the founders of Hourglassy. And any woman who has Googled clothes for fuller busts has no doubt come across Hourglassy. And so we're here to introduce you and to hear a little bit about your journeys and about how you created Hourglassy, how far you've come, and words of wisdom you might have. So I'm Karen Poirier, founder of Embrago, and I'm here with my co-host Chantelle Lott, who's the founder of Bounceless Sports Bras, and we are Full Bust Fashion. So here we go. So let's start with, if you could each just tell us a little bit about your personal journey and then how you guys came together and started Hourglassy.
Well, I, in 2007 or 8, was at a law firm retreat where I was, we had a coach who was leading the presentation, put us through an exercise. We were trying to set goals. I was thinking about different goals related to the law firm where I worked at. And then out of the blue, I was thinking, oh, well, what about clothing for full busted women? And the more she worked us through the exercise, the more excited I got. So I started doing my research on that and created my clothing line, my shirts, but I knew that it was important for people to be able to find us in a way that was natural and educational. And I originally started it as a way to document the creation of the shirts, hoping that would bring customers and bring interest. But the more I worked on it, the more I realized I also wanted it to be a resource. I was putting ads out on Craigslist to find people to be my fit models. And one of my fit models became one of my first riders. And then she got a reduction and she moved to California. So Leah at that point had been reading Hourglassy and just out of the blue said, I think you need a new writer. And it was the most amazing, wonderful addition and just the best thing that could have happened, because it's hard to keep going as one person. But over time, she and I have been able to really stagger things, have ideas. Sometimes one of us will be slow and the other one will be more involved. We've really enjoyed going to the Curve lingerie trade shows together, and Leah has this encyclopedic way of looking at bras and just remembering every single important detail about them, and just a wonderful partnership.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned that you are the founder of Campbell and Kate, which are tailored blouses for full bust women. And did you want to talk about that at all yet, or that was sort of the business that you were starting when?
Yeah, that's the business. I was starting and decided I needed to have a way for people to find the
Right.
clothing. And yet I wanted it not, I didn't want the blog to be sales, sales, sales. I want it to be the resource. So that's why you have the page that we just really try to give full scope to all the different people out there, because there's a real need for that kind of exposure.
Absolutely.
But I never actually addressed that I created, that I did that. So it's kind of appropriate. This is the shirt dress that I've made. Haven't really done anything with yet.
That's wonderful. And we want to hear more about that later, but that was the perfect segue for Leah to jump in and talk about your beginnings with Hourglassy.
Yeah. So like Darlene mentioned, I started out as a reader of Hourglassy, and I would say this was back in sort of the early days of full bust blogging. And I really enjoyed reading the posts that Darlene is talking about, which at the time was called, I think, the rack. And once I got to the end of the rack story, you know, with the writer getting a reduction, and then, you know, a couple follow-up posts, and then that was that. I thought, well, I'm a writer.
Stop there.
Yeah, I have a master's degree in arts journalism, and I had not been like aware of the full bust like market, even not for very long. You know, I went through college, and even like post and grad school and like post grad school, just like not really realizing that like bras go above a D cup, until like the blogging community basically started up. So I wrote to Darlene and just said, you know, just through like whatever WordPress contact me form was on the Hourglassy website at the time, and said, you know, oh, I'm a writer. I really enjoy this, your blog, and, you know, I'm sort of like figuring out my own size. I am like, at the time, I think I figured out at the time that I was wearing about a 28 double F. And I had just started being introduced to the brands that exist that cater to those sizes. And so Darlene and I forget if we must have had a phone call, or this is before Zoom. So, you know, we weren't meeting over the computer or anything. So we must have actually met in person, you know, or had a phone call. And we hit it off, and I started writing. And, you know, for a long time, I was writing like really diligently every single week, a dot, you know, every Friday morning, my post would be ready at like 9 a.m. And it was like that for a long time. And then, because I don't know, a few years ago, you know, COVID hit, life changes were taking place. And I mean, that goes for literally everyone who works on Hourglassy. In addition to Darlene and me, we have Jen, who has like held down the fort for the last year, while Darlene and I have been very slow in publishing, just with everything else going on. And we've had a few other writers who, you know, have written for several months at a time or a year, and then they've moved on. Just, you know, they just have other things that they have to spend their time on. Also, through the years, a lot of the full bust blogs, certainly the ones that I used to follow, have all fallen by the wayside. And there's still a big social media community, you know, on Instagram and TikTok, but I find that the like in-depth review type of blogs, there's not a whole lot of them left anymore. Yeah, I'm pretty proud and like excited that we still have Hourglassy. I actually just wrote and published my first post in like a year and a half.
Yay.
You know, during that year and a half, I moved. So I bought my husband and I bought our first house. You know, that was a whole stressful thing. Then we moved, and, you know, we're still kind of putting the house together. You know, he's actually upstairs painting right now in a room. Now I'm 3 months pregnant. So that's IVF. So that's been a whole adventure. And that's pretty much what I wrote the latest post about. Sort of, here's where I've been, here's what I've been up to, and here are the upcoming reviews. So I've got a new bra size. So I've got, you know, I've got a pile of bras to review, and soon I'll be, you know, starting to wear like dedicated maternity clothing. So I expect I'll be reviewing that. So far, I'm not impressed by the size charts that I see with the brands. Like everything says, oh, just order your pre-pregnancy size, and it's designed to like grow with your belly. And I'm like, yeah, but your belly is not the only thing that grows. So
Right.
I'm like people's boobs also grow and your rib cage expands. Like, okay, your shoulders might not get any wider, but yeah. So this is going to be a whole new review adventure, which I'm excited to do.
And the world needs it. It's so true. I mean, so many things. I want to just like first take a moment and congratulate you both, because that is the hourglassy.com is now more than 15 years old, right? Which
Yeah.
in this realm, in this part of fashion and in this, with everything changing in society with COVID and everything, that is an enormous accomplishment. So congratulations and thank you for not stopping.
And I think it says something too. Sometimes you need a break. Life is happening, nothing wrong with it. Come back to it, is there. So thanks for coming back to it.
Exactly. That so defines our lives as women, right? And all these transitions that you spanned, with you, Leah, just going through pregnancy and, and the moves and all the life changes that go with that. And then Darlene sort of like also moving, like picking up and moving house and moving states and, dealing with lots of other things. And, me in midlife, it's just like there's this, and Chantelle has young kids, and it's like this is life as a woman, right? You go through these phases, so much changes in every phase, and your body changes right along with it. And you mentioned you have a new bra size, and I think it's probably the first of many.
Yeah, I made a point of not buying too many new ones, expecting that they're probably not going to last.
Yeah.
Right. There'll be many in your future. And I remember for me, pregnancy was sort of the beginning of that planted the seed, which much later on became Embrago, because that was when I really couldn't stand having anything tight around my rib cage. So, which you will understand very well. So thank you. That was a really good summary. So, and I think that actually also kind of leads us to the next thing I wanted to ask you guys, which is, and you've touched on it a little, which is what have the major challenges been as you've, begun and built and continued, Hourglassy as it's evolved?
One challenge is that it takes a lot of time, and it doesn't make money. So there's that trade-off between what is my time worth. We've tried different schemes to try to, some affiliate marketing, some different ideas with different people. But at one point I sent Leah and Jen an article about, it was something about non-influencers, or people who are really into giving good in-depth reviews, really helping your readers, and you're not really trying to sell. And I think that encapsulated what we're trying to do. So it really is ultimately a passion project, something that we're doing because we want to contribute and help people. But because of that, you have to measure and weigh that against the other things that you need to do with your life.
It's true. It really is a service that you guys are providing in a way that is unusual, because so many reviews that you see online now really just are affiliate marketing projects, right?
Which makes another challenge, because this is just a little bit, this is a totally different direction. It's the challenge of trying to give positive but fair reviews when you don't want to destroy a new brand, but you hate their product, or you really want to give them a fighting chance. So you can't be negative like you would if you were just being, a reporter for a newspaper. You really want to give them an option, or try to paint things in as positive a light as possible. But then on the other hand, you want to keep your integrity, and the goal is for people to make informed decisions.
Have you ever, because that makes me think, if it was a bad product, have you just told the brand owner, hey, we're opting not to review this because it was so bad?
I think there was an Australian swimwear company that we ultimately couldn't review.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was also a luxury UK sleepwear line that was really, really lovely, but yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it justice.
I think that's kind, saying just because, like you said, you didn't want to put the negativity out there, you want to give them a chance. So I think that's smart and very kind.
Yeah. And occasionally there will be a product that doesn't work for us, but still we can see how it would work for other people. Like either
Yeah.
someone completely different shape, but is still full bust, or someone who's looking for something different. So in those cases, personally, I will say like, here's what my shape is, and here's what didn't work for me with this particular product, but here are the positive things about it, and here's what kind of shape or person I think that this would suit. Because again, trying to be informative, we're not trying to just say like, oh, this sucked, or oh, I love this, So if it's a product that we believe in, but it just doesn't work for one of us personally, we still want to tell the audience that we think it would work for, this would work for you, you should still give this a try. And so much of that is sort of knowing our own bodies, I guess, because then we can say like, okay, well, this bra didn't work because the wire is shaped this way for me, but if you're shaped that way, then it would work for you. Things like that. And that's like, I feel like that's a little hard to know how to do unless you've been in this for as long as we have. I'm in several like sort of fashion oriented groups on Facebook, for like swapping and selling, or like sort of offshoots for socializing. And I see questions all the time from women saying like, oh, my size changed, or, oh, I just got fitted for the first time, or, I can't find bras that like work on me. Like, what are they supposed to fit? Like, what are they supposed to do? And, those are the kind of people I think we're trying to keep in mind is, okay, how do you explain to someone like that this shape wire will work for this particular type of shape? And like, here's what we mean by this type of shape. We use a lot of terms like, orange in a glass effect, or cakes on a plate, or wide or shallow or deep cup, or full on top or full on bottom. And so I think, in addition to having a forum to write really informative, detailed reviews, it's also a little bit of like sort of teaching the like intermediate or expert level understanding of your own body, and like how to select things that suit you the best.
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot of that is sort of baked in or woven into the writing, and it is something that is, I think what's so helpful about it is that it's in the context of the review, because I've seen a lot of kind of bra educator material out there that is like very textbook, and it's like, okay, I understand that in theory, but then you want to see how it works in real life, and like how that applies, based on what you're wearing.
If you don't mind me going into two more challenges, there's always bras out there to review, but there is a dearth of clothing still. So and I think that reflects on the challenge of succeeding. A lot of companies will start, they'll have some good designs, and then they'll plateau for a while because it's hard to develop new clothing and new styles, because it's so hard to market and to find the buyers. And that then makes it hard for us to reviews, because we don't have clothing to review anymore. That's one. The other is full bust brands can be pretty expensive, and we don't always need the clothing that we want to write about. So it's hard to justify, a clothing budget for clothes that we don't really need, but it's a lot to ask a company to give a sample And then when you have a sample, you feel a little bit beholden. You want to, it comes back to sometimes returning that sample and saying, sorry, I can't review it, or this is the kind of review I'm going to write. You still want me to write. But that's ideally, and this was, I would have loved if Hourglassy could have made money so that we would have had a budget just to buy clothes and bras without having companies need to provide samples.
Right. So it could be that much more impartial.
Yeah. And when you mentioned, you know, not having enough clothes to review, that made me think of maybe why some blogs go away, because at some you have to continue to have the variety to review. And at some point, a lot of brands, you know, don't make it that far, or they don't continue, because it is a hard journey. It's a very difficult journey to stick to it. So that very well could play a role in why there aren't so many blogs anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I should also mention like how hard you guys work sort of even behind the scenes of Hourglassy, just in talking with the brands. I mean, that's how I first got to know you, and you were so generous with your time. And, you know I'm not the first, starry-eyed full bust brand who wanted to, change the world. And I know you've had a lot of those conversations. I can't imagine how many hours you've spent on the phone with entrepreneurs. And there really is. And then again, the kind of in-depth reviews that you give, where you really take care with them, and you're very thorough and you're very fair. And like you said, positive, but not in a biased kind of way, in a helpful way, helpful to the most, both the consumers and the brands, because I think you guys have probably been responsible for some of the brands that have launched and still remain out there because of the visibility and the platform that you've offered. So I wanted to ask you, since you've seen a lot of them come and go, and they do tend to come and go, what do you think, what are the reasons that so many full bust clothing brands in particular don't make it? And the ones that do, what do you think are the characteristics that, that define that success?
One way to look at it is, what are the brands that are still out there and what are the ones that have shut down? So one of the brands that is still going strong and that, we continue to feature when we can is Urki, which is based in Poland. And, they make fairly basic styles. It's a lot of short and long sleeve jersey shirts, but they do limited quantities and limited colors each season. And they do pick in like really fun colors. Like it's, there's always basics like black and white and gray, but they also choose colors that are loud and fun, mustard yellow, like bottle green, bright purple, and I don't know if it's just because it's not made out of, super high end fabric, but it's still high quality, but it's mostly cotton and polyester blends. So I don't know if their cost of manufacturing is maybe a little bit lower. And, they seem to have really gotten their patterns down. Like everything fits super consistently across tops and dresses and blazers. So they seem to be doing really well, and they, they're on social media. They seem to have a pretty good following. Prices are inexpensive. The US dollar to the Polish zloty is usually in our favor in the US. So, that helps also. And then I look at another beloved brand, which has long been out of business, and that's Didi Atelier. And that was a Russia-based company, and they made, I would say, higher end. Yeah, like their materials were higher end, their designs were more they had more tailored designs, and they had really, really beautiful ones. And so in that case, pricing, I wouldn't even say it was like what I would think of as like overpriced or expensive, just not cheap. And because those were, not necessarily all stretchy, if you weren't sure about the size chart, exchanges and returns were, from abroad at least, can be an issue. PayPal used to offer return shipping on us program, and they've done away with that. So international shopping and returns is trickier now. So I don't know if, this is just like spitballing. I don't know if the fast fashion influence is playing a big role, where the brands that are making slightly more basic designs, or they're using more forgiving fabrics, so you don't have to worry as much about possible fit issues, are doing better, whereas more tailored garments, those companies are kind of falling aside, because fit is a little more tricky and the designs are more complex. So maybe the fit isn't quite as consistent from design to design. That's kind of all I have in mind. And then, as always, it's probably a big part of it is like finding your audience. Just speaking as an American, I feel like most American women still don't realize that there's this whole other world of bras and launch swimwear that, use the rest of the alphabet. And there's not really a whole lot of American companies for swim or lingerie or clothing catering to that. So it's just like something you don't see every day necessarily, at least in this country. So yeah. And those are, I don't know, those are my sort of semi-educated, semi-uneducated thoughts.
I just like I told you, she's so analytical, and she just hit everything in her answer.
Yeah, well, and I mean, those are educated answers with, that you have drawn from 15 years experience in reviewing these brands and seeing brands come and go. So I think there's a lot there. Chantelle, did you want to take over at this point and ask some questions?
Yeah, definitely. This has been a great conversation thus far. And we, I guess continuing on with those brands that have made it, or you see make it, what are those qualities in the brands that have been able to sustain? Tough question.
Yeah, I'm getting our best clothing for Big Bus just to run through and see.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Who's left in
our
list?
Well, that's kind of disheartening. Going on the search to see who's left.
I think you guys have a section, right?
We haven't updated the list in a while. I should go through it again and see.
Yeah, we need to update it.
Right, like Bravissimo, for example. I mean, they were a huge British company. They're still making swimwear and lingerie, which I love. But they're no longer producing clothing.
Yeah, and
do we know why that is? Is there ever a reason given for that?
No, they didn't even really announce it. They just stopped making new things. And for a while, they still had their old stuff, the sizes that were still in stock on their website. And then I know the local store in New York had like a sale to sort of get stuff out of there. And there's a particular dress that I had my eye on, and I was waiting and waiting for it to go on sale. And then it just disappeared, but it's on eBay. Like,
Oh, wow.
So I think it's still there in multiple sizes. So I think they may have just liquidated remaining stock, and it's now you can find it on eBay. Truth be told, I didn't buy that much clothing from Bravissimo. They just didn't carry much that was my style. It was like a lot of, I guess it was a little on the conservative side for me. Like most of their dresses and workwear was a little just like bland. Once in a while, they would have something that was really cute. Like they would have biker jackets sometimes.
Oh, right.
They actually carried a couple real leather jackets at one point, and I was like, who's making bus-friendly leather jackets? No one. They made a couple of down jackets, which they weren't like super heavy, so not really appropriate for, you know, New England winters, but if you live in a slightly warmer climate or you use them in the fall, like they're great. And you know, I think a lot of their jackets were really on trend, actually, come to think of it.
And jackets can be hard to get a good fit for full bus women.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened with their clothing. I guess you have to assume clothing was just not selling that well, but their lingerie and swimwear is doing just fine. And also carries other brands that not just their in-house brand. So they've got a pretty wide range of lingerie and swimwear to choose from.
How much do you think awareness is a factor, just like market awareness? Because it seems like that's a challenge for a lot of the solopreneur kinds of brands. But, you know, Bravissimo had a lot of, well, I actually don't know much about like their backing or what kind of company they are, but they had a pretty big presence.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, they still do actually. There's a PR company that we work with occasionally who represents a lot of, they're New York based, but they represent quite a few full bust brands. And our like primary point of contact there actually reached out to me a month or two ago to tell me that Bravissimo is now one of their clients. So I'm like, okay, so Bravissimo has like a whole full-on PR presence in the US. They've got reach. So, you know, I told her, yeah, I'll be hitting you up for some swimwear once I like settle into a size when it's actually warm enough to swim, you know, so hopefully I'll have couple bikinis to review or something in the next couple months. Bravissimo. But yeah, I should ask her actually, like, even though I think Bravissimo became a client of theirs after the clothing dropped off, but I'm still just, why aren't they making clothes anymore?
Right.
Darlene, you touched on that, how like you always have these reviews of the bras, but it's the apparel that you all need, you know, more reviews of. Are you like, I guess, what is it about the apparel that seems not to last, like the apparel brands themselves?
I think that you can get away with basic bras in beige. You know, I don't think you have to do fashion bras to make money, probably.
Okay.
I have a feeling it's your basics. I'm not sure, I have no data, but I have a feeling that there are certain basics that are bread and butter and that companies can, you know, sustain themselves on. But clothing, people have more expectations from. They don't. I thought when I created a white button-down shirt, you know, I have enough people buying that shirt, and then I would gradually be able to do more. Now, maybe I am not I didn't go to business school, and I have a feeling that was not the way it was ever going to work out. I think that you have to take a plunge, and you need to like go all out with all sorts of styles and designs and have funding that lets you continue. Because there are certain discount stores that I would go to, and there was a new shirt company I noticed. I'm like, ooh, I have never heard of this shirt company. And he had to unload a lot of inventory at this discount off-price store. But now I notice his clothing is in boutiques. So he must have survived, right? I think that maybe we underestimate how much is needed to get past that point and finally go up. But I also know that there's an online angel investor. She talks about helping retail. She is not at all interested in clothing. It's too difficult, the margins, all sorts of challenges. She's just not interested. And I think that people want sexy tech stuff. So finding the people that can that want to fund while you get through that time is really hard. And then let's see, Didi Atelier, when she first started, she also had a lingerie segment, and she said that went really well, the lingerie. Miriam Baker in Canada is now selling prima donna, and I think that's probably helping out a lot. When I went to a lingerie store around the corner here, and I asked her, what about a petite line of clothing that I'm thinking of that I would like because I'm 5'3", and she goes, oh, you see how small our clothing rack is. She goes, we're just focusing on lingerie. So there's something about lingerie that's like very specific. You're thinking about bra size when you go there. And then there's a different kind of expectation for outerwear. Then there's another factor. We need lasers, and Didi Atelier, Bravissimo came out with a nice blazer. It wasn't perfect though, and I ended up not buying. And so I have like this standard in mind, but there are these knit blazers I found, and I thought about, I just need to develop a petite blazer for the full busted petite person. But the price that I would have to sell it at is nothing like the knit blazers that you can sort of stretch and get to fit. So lots and lots of factors.
Yeah, and you've touched on one of the biggest challenges of launching a full bust brand is, the complexity. Like, you have to use good quality materials. I mean, if you want to create a good quality item that's tailored, that lasts, that fits. And then
yes, because by the time you're making things in America or whatever country you're in, but you don't have the scale to have it produced in China. So you might as well invest in nice fabric because you're already having to pay a lot for the labor costs.
Right.
Which Erky, I don't think she sews all of her own. I don't know, Leah. She may, but I know she develops her own patterns, which is a big deal. And I don't think she only does Erky full time. I think she's an architect as well. So she day job and the clothing line.
That's amazing, because she also has a knitting, like a side project, just as a hobby. She has a knitting devoted Instagram account, which I also started following because she was posting a few things on Erky, and I was like, wow, she's really good at this knitting. And so I'm like, okay, wait, so she's an architect, and I have architects in my family, so I know that is a time-consuming job. And she has
a mom
company. Yeah, and she's a mom with a couple of kids, and she's doing this really complex knitting as a hobby. And I also have knitters in my family, and I've tried knitting, and basically all to make a rectangle. I'm like,
I think we know who you guys need to interview next.
Yes.
We want to know.
Those are the qualities. So,
Yeah.
okay, you guys have to be Superwoman to make
basically.
it.
Yes. Definitely.
Well, I think she also, is offering something that I guess other full bust brands haven't been. Bravissimo had some basics, of course, but thinking about full bust brands that are still around and ones that are new, they're actually not a whole lot of them are making sort of basic clothing items. And certainly not in a variety of colors. It's like, oh, there's this brand is making like exclusively, like sexy going out dresses.
Yeah.
And this brand is making exclusively workwear. Like business casual chic, and this company is making strictly like luxury cashmere. And it's probably helpful that each of these have like a specific niche, especially as like a startup. They're not trying to reach too much of an audience and stretching themselves too thin. But now that I'm thinking about it, not a whole lot of companies that are devoted primarily to more fashion basics are for the full bust. So maybe that's, part of Erky's success is that they found this niche that is sort of a surprising niche. and they're doing it really well.
And I'm going to add one more thing. Just like the UK has a lot of people who are used to fuller bust, the Polish market really about fuller bust.
Yeah.
I mean, they
So
have
they're
the
not having to-
best lingerie, they have the best bra brands.
Yeah. You're
Easily.
not having to educate people in Poland about D-cup and up. They already know.
Yeah.
That's good. So
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation, is that maybe it's being in the European market is a characteristic that helps, for whatever reason.
yeah.
Although on the other hand, then you have Bravissimo, which is a UK company, no longer selling clothing or no longer using it.
So I was at a art fair the other day, and I really liked this necklace this woman was selling. And I noticed behind her, she had a Lion's Lair shopping bag. And
Oh my gosh.
She's from the UK. She used to work in the city in the UK, and she depended on Bravissimo for her clothes. And she was like, she came to the States and she couldn't find bras. And she found Lion's Lair, and that was her solution. But yeah, it's a sort of like, here's the Europeans, and then here's the US.
Yeah. Lion's Lair is my gateway drug into the full bust fashion market also. As I was sort of figuring out, I don't actually wear, a 36C. I wear smaller band and bigger letters. I don't even know how I came across them. I think I don't know, I was Googling or something, and I found some Freya bikinis on their website and thought, oh, these are really cute. And at the time, they probably do Zoom fittings now, but at the time they basically did over the phone fittings. So I'm in New York City at the time. I called them in Florida, and they basically walked me through, measuring myself with a tape measure. And I ordered a couple bikinis, and then they didn't fit quite right. But I was like, okay, well, I know that this, based on the way this is fitting right now, I think I need, a band size down and a cup size up. And so I exchanged them. Postage was a lot cheaper back then. And then I had those bikinis for years, and that was my first introduction to, I wear a 28 double F or whatever it was at the time. And I am so happy to see that they're still in business, though they did just close one of their 2 in-person locations. They have 2 locations in Florida. One was in the Florida Keys. That one is closing down, but they're having a trunk sale. So if anyone is going to be in that area, definitely go get yourself some sales, bikinis and swimwear or lingerie or whatever.
How long would you say they've been around?
What was that?
How long would you say they've been around?
Decades.
Yeah.
Decades. Okay.
Yeah. So the owner, Kim, would be another great interview for you, because she tries to be very supportive of new brands. For a while, Elomi was making a swim dress for fuller busted plus size women, but it was based on Kim's recommendations. She's influential. I heard of Kim when I was starting out because Carissa Rose, she's another defunct brand, but she's the one who told me about Lion's Lair, and then I looked at Lion's Lair and I found all these bra brands I hadn't heard of. So there's some real stalwarts out there who are pillars, I would say.
Yeah.
Committed to helping women who are fuller busted.
So would that be the advice you would recommend for brands starting out, is to maybe connect with those who have been around? Or what advice would you give for brands who are starting out?
I think figure out how it can be fun for you, because it's a long haul. It's going to be a long slog, and figure out what makes you happy while you do it, so that you can be sure to put that in your life. So if going to a store like Kim, I would say find people who know people who can introduce you to them, because I think warm introductions are better than just cold. Develop, like for me, the good thing was Hourglassy, I was offering something. I was saying, hey, Kim, can we review these things for you? Kim, you know, I was down for a wedding January 3rd, for New Year's Eve. I needed a strapless. We were in Miami, so we just drove to the Keys, and I finally visited Lion's Lair and got a strapless bra. I need to write a review about it. That works well for Kim, you know. So if you can also find a way to have some give back and forth with some of the people that you're hoping would be a platform for you, not just what's in it for you, but can you find a way for there to be something in it for them?
Absolutely.
If it's a way of, you know, have you developed a good social media following that you think, you know, your images are going to help? Like, are you going to have a pop-up, and is that going to bring new people into their store? Those are just throwing out ideas.
Okay. All right. And then what advice do you have for women looking for full bust brands?
Read Hourglassy.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely look for full bust influencers. You know, there's not that many blogs left, but there are still a ton of people on Instagram and TikTok. So, you know, look for hashtags like full bust friendly or full bust wardrobe or things like that. You know, if you search for like big boobs, you're gonna get like influencers.
Yes.
Which is fine. Maybe they have some good recommendations also. I don't know. But yeah, there's still like a pretty big scene on social media, I would say, for influencers. And you know, with influencers, like if it's a sponsored post, you have to take it with like a little bit of a grain of salt. But it's still like, at least I know there's a lot of editing, and there's a lot of apps now that can even edit video and you can't tell the difference, but I feel like you can kind of see the difference usually between someone who's an influencer as like being an influencer as their career versus being like a reviewer as an influencer, if that makes sense. And you know, look for influencers whose bodies are like similar shape to yours, and like what they're trying on in their photos and see how it's fitting them. And if you see something that's cute that you like, maybe try and find other influencers who are reviewing the same product, because I find that a lot of the time you will see multiple influencers or multiple social media bloggers with the same product at the same time. And it's like, oh, okay, clearly this brand is like doing a push right now. But at least that way you can see how the same garment is fitting on multiple people. So that can be helpful. And
That's a really great suggestion. Finding somebody with your shape.
Yeah. You know, there's a very popular full bust Reddit called A Bra That Fits. There's a lot there, you know, there are several Facebook community groups. There's one called Clothes for Boobs that, you know, I've been a member of for many, many years. And it's women selling and swapping clothes and bras, but also just like conversation. So, you know, has anybody tried this particular item yet? Has anybody seen this new brand? It's not as active as other social media platforms. I know Facebook is kind of like considered to be for like old fuddy-duddies at this point. But if you can find a particular community dedicated to a specific niche, then you can often find like a size twin in there or a few. And you can, if you are comfortable with it, like you can sort of build up relationships with these people and sort of trade fit advice. So, you know, for example, there's this particular dress brand that has a pretty rabid following. You know, I reviewed them, I don't know how many times. They're called Trashy Diva. And there are like 2 or 3, probably more even, Facebook groups, specifically fan groups for this brand, where And people have actually started conversation threads that are like, okay, everybody put in your measurements and let's find our size twins. So, you
That's
know,
so cool.
now I know people in the Trashy Diva fan group who I can count on for fit advice because, or fit direction, because I'm like, okay, well, I know they have the same or similar measurements to me, or they're the same height as me, or they, you know, and that can actually be a double-edged sword because there may be a dress that I see in the manufacturer photos and think, oh, well, that's cute, but I don't know, whatever. But then I see one of my like size twins wearing it and I'm like, that looks really good on her. Okay, now I want it.
There's a lot of good information there, and we'll collect all these links and put them in
Definitely.
so that people
A
can.
lot of great information shared. As we wrap up, is there anything that you would want to share that our viewers should absolutely know?
But this
that we
has
haven't
got me
covered?
so much. Every time I talk to Karen and now talking with you guys in this setting, it just gets me very excited about the possibilities. It makes me
Yeah.
wanna, like, get back into it. So it's definitely a problem, and it is a problem trying to find clothes that you're happy with, that fit the way you want them. We're not alone. Everybody thinks that they are the only one who has a certain issue. Our issue is being fuller busted. And I just really hope, and if there are people out there who want to develop more clothing, wonderful. If there are people who want to write for Hourglassy, who tried things that they want to review, because it really is a crowdsourced type of environment. Like this is major, and it's hard for one person or any one person to do everything that's needed.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies. We definitely know that this community is here. This community needs to continue to build each other up. So thank you for being part of this full bust fashion conversation. And if you haven't checked out Hourglassy, go check out Hourglassy. And like Karen said, we'll be putting those links in there, but let's continue to build the full bust community up and to be our best selves through this community.
Love.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.